Hey everyone, and welcome back to the deep dive. I am really pumped for this one because we're tackling a question that came straight from you, our listeners.
Oh, this is going to be good.
It's a question that's been swirling around church circles for ages. And honestly, it's one that I've wrestled with myself. Can single Christians really handle those big leadership roles in the church?
It's a question that can cause some serious friction, right? I mean, let's be real. There are churches out there that hesitate big time when it comes to putting single folks in charge.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And often they point to concerns about, stability or the potential for stumbling. Like, is that a single person more likely to make a choice that goes against the church's teaching?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And, a lot of those concerns come from how certain Bible passages have been interpreted. But that's where the source material you guys sent gets super interesting. It really digs into the scriptural arguments. And the text zones in on three key passages: 1 Timothy 3.2, 1 Timothy 3.12, and Titus 1.6.
Oh, yeah, those are like the classic go-to verses, right? I've heard them used to say that church leaders got to be married.
Right, and on the surface, it seems pretty straightforward. But the source material is pushing us to look deeper. It's saying, hold on, it's not as black and white as it might seem. If you really unpack those passages, the main point isn't just about being married. It's more about qualities, like being above reproach, being blameless, and being able to manage a household well.
That's interesting. So are we saying those qualities automatically mean someone has to be married?
That's the million-dollar question, right? And to make things even more complicated, the source brings up young widows in 1 Timothy 5.14.
Okay, I see where you're going with this. That verse is sometimes used to argue against single people in leadership because it talks about young widows needing to remarry and manage their own households.
Exactly. Like people are cherry-picking verses to fit their existing views.
So how do we make sure we're not doing that? How can we approach these passages with a more balanced and informed view?
Context, my friend. Context is key. We can't just isolate a verse. We need to look at the surrounding text and the historical situation. So in 1 Timothy 5.13, if you read the verses before, it's clear that Paul is addressing specific challenges faced by young widows back then.
So not a blanket statement about all single people.
Right. It's about those specific widows in that specific time. But hold on to your hats, because the source throws another curveball with 1 Corinthians 7.3234.
Oh yeah, this is where things get really interesting. This passage seems to totally flip the script. It actually highlights the unique advantages that single people have in serving God.
It does, doesn't it? It kind of blew my mind when I first read it because it goes against everything we usually hear.
So what's Paul saying here?
He's saying that while married folks are rightly focused on their spouses, single people can pour all their energy into ministry. They have this laser focus that married people with their divided responsibilities might not.
So could this focused dedication actually make single people even better suited for certain leadership positions?
It's definitely something to consider, right? I mean, think about people like Joseph Daniel, the young Samuel, all single and incredibly faithful.
And they weren't just sitting around being pious, they were making a huge impact. Joseph saved Egypt from famine, Daniel interpreted dreams for kings, Samuel became a prophet and a judge. These guys were leaders.
Exactly. And another thing that struck me, the Bible never says whether Jesus' disciples were married or not.
That's true. You'd think if marriage was a must-have for leadership, it would have been mentioned somewhere. And, we can't forget that verse from 1 Samuel 16.7.
Oh man, that's a powerful one. Man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart.
It's like a mic drop moment, right?
Yeah.
God cares about character and inner qualities, not just whether someone's got a ring on their finger.
So are we saying that getting hung up on whether someone's single or married is missing the point?
It seems that maybe the real question is, does this person have the character, the spiritual maturity, and the gifts needed for this particular leadership role?
Exactly. We need to shift our focus from marital status to those core qualities.
This deep dive is really challenging my own assumptions. It's amazing how our cultural biases can sneak into how we read the Bible.
Isn't it? We all come to the Bible with our own baggage, but we have to be open to having our views challenged.
Well, I'm feeling challenged in a good way. This conversation has definitely opened my eyes, and I'm really excited to see where this deep dive takes us next.
Me too. Let's keep going and explore what all this means for the church today.
So we've been talking about how focusing on someone's marital status might not be the best way to decide if they're ready for leadership.
Right. We need to look deeper. It's about recognizing that singleness is not just some waiting period before marriage.
It's like it has its own value and its own gifts to offer, right?
Absolutely. And those gifts can be a real strength when it comes to serving God and the church. So how can single people really shine in those leadership roles.
I mean, we talked about how single people can have that undivided focus.
Right. And that translates to a level of flexibility and availability that can be super valuable in ministry.
So are we saying that single people might be better equipped to handle roles that require putting in crazy hours, maybe traveling at the drop of a hat, or just really dedicating themselves to a specific project?
You're getting it. Think about it. A single pastor might be more free to visit someone in the hospital at any time or pour their evenings into youth group without having to juggle family commitments.
It's like they can be those always-on-call first responders of the church,
I
right?
like that analogy. They're ready to jump in wherever and whenever needed.
So flexibility and availability are huge, but are there other strengths that often come with being single?
Totally. I mean, let's not underestimate the power of passion and zeal. When your heart is fully set on serving God and building his kingdom, that energy can be contagious.
It's like that fire in the belly drive to make a real difference.
And that can be so inspiring to others, especially younger people who are looking for role models.
Yeah, it's like showing them that you can have a fulfilling and impactful life even if you're not married, which, let's face it, is a message that needs to be heard more in our culture.
For sure. We put so much pressure on marriage and family as the ultimate goals. But God's plan for each of us is unique.
And churches need to recognize and celebrate those different paths, create a space where everyone can thrive.
It's like having a toolbox and saying, oh, you can't use those tools over there just because they're different. It makes no sense.
Not only does it not make sense, but it limits the church's effectiveness and sends the message that single people aren't fully valued or equipped.
And that can be so discouraging.
Yeah.
If you keep hearing you're not ready just because you're not married, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
It makes you wonder how much potential we've missed out on because of these outdated ideas.
It's a tough thought, but the good news is we can change things. We could start by having open and honest conversations, challenging our own biases, and finding ways to empower everyone in the church.
It's about creating a culture where everyone feels seen and valued for who they are and what they bring to the table, regardless of their relationship status.
Exactly. And it's not about fixing something that's broken. It's about recognizing the unique strengths of single people and creating a space where those gifts can flourish.
So let's say there's a church leader listening right now and they're thinking, okay, I want to do better. Where do I even start?
It starts with a shift in mindset.
Yeah.
We need to move past those surface-level assumptions and dig into what it means to truly support and empower single people.
So what would that look like practically?
It could mean intentionally mentoring and discipling single individuals.
So invest in them. Don't make them jump through hoops before giving them a chance.
Right. It could also mean creating leadership roles that play to the strengths of single people.
Roles that really take advantage of their flexibility and their passion.
And sometimes it's as simple as fostering a culture where single people feel seen, heard, and valued.
A place where they're not just seen as potential married people, but as whole individuals who have something to offer right now.
And when single people feel valued, they're more likely to step up and use their gifts. It's a win-win for everyone.
This whole deep dive has been so insightful. We've covered a lot, but it feels like we've only just scratched the surface.
There's always more to discover. That's the beauty of it.
Before we wrap up, I want to make sure we leave our listeners with something tangible, something they can take away and apply to their own lives.
Well, as I've been thinking about all this, one question keeps coming to mind. If singleness can be such a strength, how can we do a better job of supporting and empowering single people to use their gifts for ministry and leadership?
Ooh, that's a good one. It feels like a challenge to all of us.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a challenge for all of us, not just for those in leadership, but for every single person in the church community.
Right. We need to take a hard look at ourselves and ask, are we really creating spaces where our single brothers and sisters feel like they can contribute? Are we giving them opportunities to grow, to develop their leadership skills?
I mean, are we actually celebrating their contributions and affirming their value within the church? Are we walking the walk?
And honestly, I think a lot of churches would have to admit they have room for improvement. Sometimes our structures and traditions end up unintentionally sidelining single people.
It's like we're saying, hold on, your real life hasn't started yet. Just wait till you're married.
And that's so messed up. Singleness isn't a waiting room. It's a season of life with its own beauty and purpose.
It's a time for growth, for drawing closer to God, for pouring yourself into ministry in a way that might look different later on.
Exactly. So how do
Wow.
we shift the narrative? How do we make sure both single and married people feel valued and empowered?
It feels like it's everyone's responsibility. It's not just about leaders handing out opportunities. It's about all of us saying, how can I support and encourage the single people in my church?
It's about creating that sense of belonging, that feeling that we're all in this together.
And sometimes the smallest actions can mean the world.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like inviting someone to serve on a ministry team with you, making a point of acknowledging their contributions in front of others.
Or just taking the time to really listen to them and hear their hopes and dreams.
It's about building each other up,
Mm.
encouraging one another, empowering single people to step up and lead without feeling like they need to wait for a spouse to give them permission.
Because at the end of the day, it shouldn't matter if you're single or married. What matters is that you're following God's call and using your gifts to make a difference.
It's about being faithful to what God has placed in your heart.
Wow, this deep dive has been so powerful. It's given me a fresh perspective and a renewed sense of hope.
I feel it too. It's exciting to think about what could happen if churches truly embraced the gifts that single people bring.
Just imagine the possibilities if we could break free from those old ways of thinking and create a space where everyone feels valued and empowered to lead.
It's a beautiful vision, and it's a vision worth fighting for.
So let's recap one more time. It's not about checking boxes, it's about character. It's about gifting. And most importantly, it's about a heart that's fully surrendered to God.
We need to rethink our criteria for leadership, and we need to create environments where everyone feels equipped and ready to serve.
It's not just about filling positions, it's about building a stronger, more vibrant, more inclusive church where everyone can thrive.
So beautifully put.
Yeah.
A huge thank you to all of you for sending in this incredible topic and for sparking this conversation.
Seriously, you guys keep those questions coming because we are loving these deep dives.
And who knows what amazing discoveries are waiting for us just around the corner.
Until next time, keep diving deep, everyone.